Hello everyone, this is Marco and welcome back to my channel. Today I bring you a very special video that is inspired by the good old days. Yes, we're going back in time to a time where I would sculpt dinosaurs with just masking tape. Yes, masking tape and Milliput. For those who have joined my channel recently, those types of videos are what made my channel blow up. I started doing them back in 2018, when Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was just announced and the first trailers came out. I owe it all to this little guy right here. I made a sculpt of the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom baryonyx, but that was before we had a good look at the final design. So I based it on a few different things. I got inspiration from the Mattel toy, but the paint job was based more on the website version. And then it all took off and it did sculpts of pretty much all the dinosaurs that I could think of, or all the ones that I wanted to sculpt. But why am I bringing all of this up? Well, I'm kind of feeling some nostalgia towards that time, and I kind of want to relive a little bit of that because of the new Jurassic World Rebirth film coming out. We're living through a very similar time where we're getting toy leaks, the New York Toy Fair showing off some of the new toys for the film, the whole speculation about what the dinosaurs actually look like in the film. There was just this sense of magic in the air. And what better way to celebrate it and bring it back a little bit by doing a sculpting video as I did all that time ago. So I proudly present to you a brand new classic Marco Makes sculpting video. First things first, let's take a look at the materials I'll be using. In this video, I'll be using the following products. Links are in the description. Milliput has kindly provided these products for me to use in this video. It's a company based in the UK, which produces this amazing epoxy putty that can be used for virtually anything. It's easy to use, easy to sculpt, it's waterproof, and it sets rock solid. It also comes in different colors. So if you want to know more about this product, be sure to visit their website. We'll also be using masking tape, PVA glue, sculpting tools and toothpicks, some card and scissors, a craft knife might come in handy too, super glue, acrylic paints, tons of time and lots of patience, and a glass of water. Now we're all set, we can start this project. As you might have guessed from the title and the thumbnail, we're going to be sculpting the Jurassic World Rebirth Spinosaurus. We haven't had a 100% clear look at it just yet, so I kind of had to make up this render based on what we saw in the trailer. It might not be 100% accurate, but it's the closest we've got so far. So after an excruciatingly long time of photo editing on Photoshop, I came up with this render. I printed it out for me to use as the main reference. The model I'll be sculpting is going to be 1-to-1 to this render. I need to trace an outline of the Spinosaurus on some card. So the best solution is to grab some masking tape and lightly position it onto the render. As you might have noticed, the masking tape is slightly transparent and we can see the picture underneath. And here I'm using a pencil and I'm tracing the outline of the Spinosaurus onto the tape. If you're as big of a genius as I am for coming up with this idea, you might have already guessed the next step. We're peeling it off and then putting it onto a piece of card. After pressing it nicely onto the card, we can now cut out the shape using some scissors. My goodness, my brain is so wrinkly right now. And after a full 2 minutes of repeatedly squeezing the scissors with my hand, the outline is now cut. And with that, we can now peel off the masking tape and we've got this lovely silhouette. You might have noticed that I did not include the arms and the legs. Well, we'll be adding those later. The thing about cutting out a silhouette out of card is that you might have noticed that it's a bit flat. So by using the most unconventional method known to man, we're going to be bulking up the shape with some masking tape. This is a procedure I came up with when I was a child. I didn't have much access to real sculpting materials like clay, so I learnt to become resourceful. I just used whatever was lying around in the house, much to my parents' dismay. So I began rolling some bits of tape with the sticky side out, and layering the pieces one by one, I was able to add some volume and 3D shapes to my models. It's a very similar concept as using clay, but it's a lot less messy. So this is exactly what you're seeing me do in the footage right now. I also flipped it over so I could give more volume to the other side in a symmetrical manner. And once I was happy with the shape, I consolidated everything by applying some tape with the sticky side down this time, pretty much covering the whole thing. Now the main body part is done, we can move on to the limbs. Since we have 2 pairs of legs and 2 pairs of arms, I'm going to be repeating the same process twice, but I'm not going to show it on camera for your own sanity. At the end of the day, you don't want to be as crazy as I am. So you can see I filled in the shape of the leg like that, and we're going to also be adding the toes. For those, I rolled up some much skinnier pieces of tape into this shape and then applied them onto the leg. Like so. Here's one toe done, and next we're going to do the other one. Since the dew claw is much smaller, we're going to be adding that later with the Milliput. Look at those nice 3-toed chicken legs. Yummy. Do you think dinosaurs tasted like chicken? Well, I guess so, because technically birds are dinosaurs at the end of the day. So for the chicken wings, we're going to be taking some even smaller bits of tape and rolling them up. As you can see, one rolled up piece of tape works fine for each digit of the hand. That's really handy, isn't it? Please laugh. Once we're happy with the shape, we can consolidate it with some more tape, with the sticky side down just like before. I repeated the same process twice because I love myself and I'm not crazy. And now it's time to assemble. Nice. One thing to note is that this masking tape core has to be a little bit skinnier than what we want our final product to look like. That's because we're going to be adding a layer of Milliput over the whole thing. Let it all set, and once it's all done, we can cover it all up with some PVA glue to consolidate everything. Open up the bottle and apply generously. This will help the tape prevent it from peeling. Yep, because that happened before I used the PVA glue trick. That's the last thing you want to happen when applying Milliput over it. Oh, so I left it for a day to dry, and look at that, it stands too. Oh, I'm just that good. Milliput time, the best part. What we're going to do is grab the 2 parts and mix them in really well. We have about an hour work time before it hardens, so we're going to be working in sections. First section is the head. I'm covering up the head section with a thin layer of Milliput, pressing it down firmly so that there's no air gaps in between the masking tape core and the Milliput itself. Then I started adding bit by bit some extra volume here and there and removing some where needed. I added a bit more material around the eyebrow area by rolling a bit of Milliput and using the toothpick to sort of squish it into place. The nice thing about Milliput is that you can smooth it out with water, so that's what I did too. I used the back of a paintbrush and pressed it in where the fenestrae in the skull go. Then using that toothpick again, I drew the line of the mouth. I really like using the back part of a paintbrush because it's quite rounded. For making generic shapes, it's really handy because it doesn't have a sharp edge to it. I use the toothpick to sculpt finer details or to blend in a little bit of the Milliput. Here I'm refining a little bit of the mouth line on the bottom jaw, and I'm adding a little bit more Milliput around the lip area. The bottom jaw needed a little bit more muscle, so I added it towards the back of it. Then I sculpted the eye. I added some Milliput, and then with a toothpick, I carefully scored the outline of the eye. It was a very delicate procedure, and I held my breath throughout the whole thing. I added a nostril, and then I sculpted some of the detail around the lip area, and carefully scoring with a toothpick to add some texture. Since this is quite a small area, I'm not doing a texturing time-lapse, but you'll be getting plenty of that later on. I used some water and a paintbrush to smooth out the texture and make it look a little bit more organic. For your own sanity, I'm not showing you all of the other side, but I did repeat the whole process on the other side too. I added a little bit of a crest on the top of the head because it is present in the trailer, and lightly textured it too by adding some very fine lines on it. I let the head set and harden after about an hour or so, and I moved on to the neck. The very short, stubby neck on this Spinosaurus. The very silly looking neck on this Spinosaurus. Anyway, I covered it all up and smoothed it out. Paintbrush and some water really does help with Milliput. It's brilliant. Then by using a combination of the toothpick and the back of a paintbrush, I sculpted in some detail, like some folds in the skin. Sometimes by scoring in some detail, you're left with some harsh edges. So by using a paintbrush and some water, we can kind of smooth it all out and make it look more organic, as I said earlier. Since I was feeling particularly brave at that time, I decided to mix a little bit more Milliput and start the body. That way I could texture the neck and the body at the same time. That meant I had to hurry the heck up. So I quickly put the layer of Milliput on and pressed it down and smoothed it out as quickly as I humanly possibly could. By using the lovely back part of the paintbrush again, I scored in some of the spines on the sail, smoothed it out with water and a paintbrush, then I scored in some folds in the skin on the body, lightly scored in the shoulder blade too, and smoothed everything out. Now comes the first texturing time lapse! There you go, I hope you enjoyed that. So, we've got one side done, and I did the other side too, because in Bradley's words, we do not want a lopsided dinosaur. So now we're going to do the tail. We're going to be repeating the same thing, mixing some Milliput, squishing it onto the tail, and then smoothing it all out with some water. By the way, if you're wondering how I've been texturing the body, well, I just got the toothpick and just scored some random circles here and there and lines and all of that. Here comes the back side of the paintbrush again, and I'm scoring in the spines on the tail. I went over it again with progressively a larger paintbrush just to make the spines look a bit more organic, and then I smoothed everything out. Now guess what comes next? Hey now! I'm having too much fun editing this. I sculpted the other side of the tail off camera. You can thank me because I don't want you to go as crazy as I am. Next we can do the limbs. I'm covering up the legs with some Milliput, started with the thigh and then with the calf, and then we'll end with the feet. I usually make the legs a little bit thicker than I actually want them, so I made sure to squeeze the Milliput down as much as I could. And now comes my nightmare. Sculpting the feet is probably one of the most painful experiences.
A few moments later.
Oh my goodness.
3 hours later.
Once I was happy with how the feet looked, gosh, it was quite hard. I smoothed everything out and then using again the back of a paintbrush, scored in some of the muscles on the thighs and on the calf too. And I smoothed everything out with some water and a paintbrush. And here comes your favorite segment again. And with that texturing out the way, we can move on to the arms. Now on this model, the arms are quite small, so it required the least amount of Milliput for this. And I made sure again for the arms to not look too stubby or too big, so I pressed the Milliput as hard onto the core as possible. I defined the fingers a bit better with a toothpick, and then with the back of the paintbrush, I did a bit of the musculature. Someone with a keen eye might have noticed that I missed out on the teeth. Well, guess what? We're doing that now. I rolled out some pointy bits of Milliput and applied them onto the face. Now here we're doing something a bit clever. We're going to need to add some spikes and some claws to the figure. So we're going to be using the ends of the toothpicks because they're quite pointy. They're perfect. So I grabbed a dollop of super glue and attached each end of the toothpick bit by bit. And it wasn't excruciating at all. And it absolutely didn't take forever. Time to add the claws. Added a bit of super glue on the hands and attached the ends of the toothpicks again. You might remember a technique I introduced with the Baryonyx and Allosaurus video where I did some texture using some super glue. Well, we're going to do that by adding some osteoderms onto the body. And with that over, the model is completely sculpted. Having worked with digital sculpting for a few years really made me realize how much friggin' work this stuff actually is. You guessed it, it's painting time. I mix my own colours using primary ones. I like to have a bit more control over the colours I mixed instead of using pre-mixed ones. I painted the whole figure with this brown. It looks a bit brighter than what it should look like, but we're going to be adding some washes and dry brushes anyway, so that's going to dull it down. I painted the spine yellow, and then I blended in the brown from the body and the yellow of the spine with like an orangey brown in the middle and watering it down to really blend them together. This helps make the transition between those two colours a lot less abrupt. I used a watered down yellow to make a little bit of patterning here and there on the neck. Then I mixed in a very, very, very dark brown and painted in all of the patterns on the sail and on the tail. Oh, look at it all come together. I used that same mix of very dark brown to paint in some of the fenestrae and a bit of the details around the mouth and on the body too. I used that orangey brown we mixed in earlier to blend in a bit of the stripes. I thought they looked a little bit too coarse, and that actually helped a lot. Then I added some white to the body mix and painted in the counter shading, starting from the chin, going down to the tail. I made sure to blend it in properly with the body color using a wet paintbrush. Then I added a black wash, using very, very watered down black acrylic paint. This is always quite tough to pull off, but it worked. Then I mixed in a light grey and dry brushed over the whole thing. I went over it multiple times, especially on the counter shading area. I used that same yellow from earlier to paint in the eyes. Then I noticed I forgot to add this little dark pattern here, and I used the same dark brown mix we used earlier. I mixed in some white and yellow and painted in the teeth. This was quite tough to pull off, but I did it. They are very tiny. Talking about tiny, I painted in the pupils with some black paint. And with that same black paint, I painted in all the claws. On the feet, on the hands, and also the dew claws. Lastly, when the paint was dry, I sealed it with this sealer. Everybody, I present to you the finished Spinosaurus. Look at that, I actually went outside to the beach and took pictures and videos of it. Oh, I'm very happy I did that. It looks really nice. What do you guys think about this Spinosaurus sculpt? I put a lot of effort into it, and my goodness, it took much longer than I thought it would. Hopefully this video brought back some memories from the good old days. I'll make some more if you want me to. Thank you so very much for sticking around all these years, and I'll catch you in the next video.